The United Kingdom boasts a long and storied economic history, marked by periods of groundbreaking growth and prosperity, as well as considerable challenges and declines, proving that even mighty empires are not immune to economic stumbles. From the pioneering achievements of the Industrial Revolution, which ushered in unprecedented wealth, along with appalling labor conditions, to the post-war recovery efforts that steadied the nation through years of rationing luxury, and the more recent upheavals brought about by globalization and Brexit, the UK's economic trajectory has been a winding path. In this video, we'll look at the factors that elevated Britain to economic dominance on the world stage, as well as the forces that contributed to its subsequent rebalancing. Shall we? But before starting the chapters of this video, what are your thoughts on Britain's economic decline thus far? Let us know in the comments below. The Industrial Revolution, which got started in Britain in the late 1700s, was a really big deal that launched Britain into becoming a major economic powerhouse. Suddenly, industries were mechanized as a result of technological marvels such as the steam engine and the spinning spindle, saving poor workers from the burden of manual labor, or so history books claim. This increased productivity and efficiency paved the way for breakneck economic growth. As economic historian Robert C. Allen notes, Britain's high wages and abundant coal reserves provided the quintessential conditions for the Industrial Revolution to take root and flourish. By 1830, this pluggy island nation amazingly accounted for nearly 10% of global industrial production, a feat no doubt achieved through the virtues of British ingenuity and hard work alone, with no exploitative practices to speak of. The British Empire, which at its zenith spanned over a quarter of the globe, certainly played an ancillary role in economic ascendancy. Access to colonial resources and markets offered the bonus of raw materials, labor, and new consumer bases ripe for economic cultivation. As historian Niall Ferguson argues, the empire merely facilitated the expansion of British capitalism and global trade, a wholly benign undertaking, of course. The City of London became the most important center for finance and banking in the whole world. This happened because of some really creative people who came up with new financial ideas and innovations. The start of the Bank of England back in 1694 set the example that other countries later followed when they created their own modern central banking systems. Global investment was drawn to pioneering fiscal instruments such as government bonds and corporate stocks. By 1913, nearly two-thirds of international finance flowed through the square mile of London, an astounding achievement for such a modest nation. Shifting quickly to the UK's economic decline after World War II, several key factors precipitated this downward trajectory. Britain had to deal with huge problems in trying to rebuild its economy and infrastructure that had been badly damaged during the 6 years of fighting. The massive costs of having the entire country focused on the war effort left Britain's finances in terrible shape. The nation debt shot way up from £760 million to £3.5 billion by 1945. Britain had spent nearly one-fourth of its total national wealth, around £7 billion, just on the war itself. The country was in very rough economic shape after the war was over. Desperate economic conditions necessitated harsh austerity policies aimed at stabilizing the economy and funding reconstruction programs. The new Labour government led by Clement Attlee extended wartime rationing of food, clothing, and other essential goods, which had already been in place since 1940. Rationing would continue for nearly a decade more until 1954 to allow spending to be focused on more critical needs. Taxes were raised significantly across the board, and public spending was severely restricted outside of core areas like housing, infrastructure, and industrial rebuilding. This placed a heavy burden on British households still recovering from the physical and psychological tolls of the war years. Britain also had to turn to allies like the United States and Canada for emergency loans to finance essential imports as its export industries slowly came back online. The nation was spending £2 billion abroad annually while only earning £350 million, creating an unsustainable trade deficit. The scale of destruction was immense. 1 in 3 British homes had been bombed, along with factories, roads, bridges, and other critical infrastructure. Over 60,000 civilians had lost their lives in Luftwaffe bombing raids. The merchant naval fleet was decimated, with 177 ships sunk, crippling food transportation. Manpower shortages were another challenge. Though virtually full employment was reached, 264,000 military personnel had been killed, while many more returned home disabled or suffering psychological trauma, unable to immediately rejoin the workforce. In this austere environment, individual sacrifice remained the norm rather than the exception for years after the war's end. Incomes were stagnant, and living standards remained depressed as the nation marshaled its limited resources toward the Herculean task of rebuilding. Though a sense of optimism at having defeated the Axis threat pervaded, it was also clear Britain's standing as a global superpower had diminished. Deindustrialization further ravaged industries like coal, shipbuilding, and steel that once drove the economy. The United Kingdom lost nearly 3,000 coal mines throughout the 20th century, leaving only 30. In December 2015, the UK's final operational deep coal mine closed. Foreign competition led to plant closures and job losses. The Centre for Cities found the UK lost over 60% of manufacturing jobs from 1971 to 2011, devastating regions like the West Midlands. This wrenching shift to a service economy caused widespread unemployment and stagnation. Economic policies played a role too. Debates over nationalization and privatization disrupted investment. The 1990s ERM crisis exposed flaws in fiscal/monetary management. Economist Nicholas Crafts argues the UK failed to address low productivity and lacking innovation, hampering global competitiveness. GDP per capita lagged over advanced economies by the late 20th century. Don't get me wrong, the UK is still, by international standards, a developed economy with a highly educated labor population and distinct competitive advantages in several important industries. At least, that's what they would have you think. Yet, the impact of the 2008 financial crisis on the UK economy was more significant than some other countries. So, how come? Well, the UK had no big manufacturing base, and the economy depended on financial services, real estate, and retail sales for growth. This kind of growth wasn't very solid, though. It relied too much on people borrowing lots of money through risky loans and credit. It was like a big borrowing bubble that couldn't last forever. Finally, in 2008, that whole bubble burst, causing big problems for the UK economy. These 3 industries were hit the hardest by the ripple effects of the financial collapse. When house prices fell spectacularly and credit scores dried up, the UK economy suffered tremendously. The huge negative impact on the UK economy would prove to have several long-term consequences, as we can see today. Brexit, the UK's decision to leave the European Union in 2020, has really impacted the future of the country's economy. Some people say it gives chances to make new trade deals and bring in money from other countries, but others are worried it could mess up supply chains and make the UK lose access to the EU's single big market. Following Brexit, the UK's attraction as a gateway for the EU market has diminished, resulting in a 27% fall in foreign direct investment entering the country from its high in 2016 to 2017. Some industries have had reductions of over 60%. In a previous video called Why the UK Economy Has Become a Third World Country, we discussed some of the challenges the UK economy faces today. As noted in the video, the UK was in a recession, but right now, it sure looks like it may have clawed its way out. The country's GDP grew 0.6% in the first 3 months of 2024 compared to the previous 3 months, according to the data from the Office for National Statistics. With an election anticipated later this year, this might provide Prime Minister Rishi Sunak with a much-needed boost. The UK economy is even said to have suffered sadly more than that of other countries, mainly because of its prolonged focus on austerity policies. In addition, the UK's ranking on the Corruption Perceptions Index dropped to 20th place globally in 2023, its lowest point ever. This resulted from political unrest and controversies about contributions, COVID contracts, and the honours system. One pretty big issue the UK will have to deal with for a long time is its population getting older. By the year 2045, the percentage of people over 85 years old is expected to nearly triple, meaning it will increase almost 3 times from what it is now to 4.3% of the total population, further straining the economy. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking content.